Hello, students of American history, 1865 to the present. Professor Berninger here coming at you. And I am today coming to you from a 19th century pig slaughtering house. And what you just looked at was actually something that's very, very rare. I know of no other ones. That's a giant wheel with a shaft. And it is to hoist an animal carcass in the air, in this case a pig at a pig slaughtering house, which might weigh 250 pounds. And one man could do it because a rope would turn the big wheel that you saw, and then the shaft would turn much more slowly, but the one man could, using the powers of gearing, one man could hoist up a pretty heavy animal for processing here. So why do I come here? Well, today's lesson, if you will, is about the unbelievable changes in American life from 1865 to today. I'm going to try to overstate it, but I'm not sure I can. Okay, I'm not sure I can. It is the biggest change. That's what are we talking here? 135 years. Everyday life, the way humans go about living, changed more in that time period than they had changed in the previous 98,000 years. Okay? So human beings in our current state, we've been around roughly, give or take, 10,000 years. We've been around about 100,000 years. And life from day one right up until the 1800s didn't change a whole heck of a lot. Of course, one of the biggest changes in that time period was agriculture. So very early human beings would just walk around and gather up nuts and berries, kill an animal once in a while. It was actually a pretty good life, right? And then humans came up with agriculture. You plant seeds and you domesticate animals and you get your food that way. And that allowed us to reproduce at a much higher rate and to live in a more civilized society. So that was big. But once agriculture came about, life changed very, very little for tens of thousands of years. You needed fire, you needed food, you needed shelter. You had no expectation that your life was going to be any better than your parents or your kids was going to be any better. You lived to live. Survival was success. Okay? So life in America and most of the world in, say, 1800 was very, very similar to life 90,000 years ago. So around 1820, things started to change quite a bit. We really got this thing going where we dig stuff out of the ground like coal, right? And then we figure out, hey, we can pump this liquidy stuff out. We can pump oil out of the ground, right? And you're surrounded by oil, right? A lot of your clothing is petroleum-based. Any plastic is petroleum-based. Certainly fuel for your cars and heat for your homes. So oil runs the world right now. It's hopefully going to change soon. So we figure that out, and then it takes a while for that to really kick in. And then by the time we get to the time span of this class, 1865, burning of coal and then oil really gets rolling along. And then in this really short time period, remember, humans have been around for maybe 100,000 years. In this time period, we're talking about 1865 to today, life changes radically. Now, what's interesting is we don't, genetically, right? My tongue, my teeth, my nose, not that different than somebody from 10, 15, 20,000 years ago, right? I could get transported back in time 20,000 years and I'd be pretty much, my body would be the same, put me down in England or Germany, where my ancestors come from, and put me in some clothing, and as long as I don't speak, nobody would really notice that I was any different than they were. So genetically, we're the same as from tens of thousands of years, yet we live in this world which is so totally different. Cell phones, cars, you can fly around the globe, right? You can be on another continent across an ocean in 5 hours. but yet we're still pretty much the same mentally, physically, as we were when maybe you lived your whole life without going more than a few miles from where your house was. And I think that explains a lot of the sort of craziness, the anxiety that we all live with, and the pressures, and this weird thing called time, right? Time is really new, right? Time as in, oh, I gotta be somewhere at 10 o'clock. It's called measured time, right? 10 o'clock, 8 o'clock, 3 o'clock, we have an hour. Our class is an hour and 20 minutes. That measured time is really, really new. Before that, you were lived time. You got up, you had stuff to do, you did it, sun went down, you went to bed. There was no concept of hours. So think about that. That's very, very different. So anyway, I've been spending a little time with this book. It is called The Rise and Fall of American Growth. Ooh. And it's by Robert J. Gordon. And his thesis is exactly what I just outlined for you. That in the time period of our course, life changed very, 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 very much, very much. And I just want to read some quotations from this great introduction to his book for you. Our starting point, his book starts in 1870. Our starting point in 1870 should not be taken to diminish the progress that had been made in the previous half century, 50 years. A newborn child, listen, you listening? A newborn child in 1820 entered a world that was almost medieval. So medieval time period, 1,000 years ago. A dim world lit by candlelight, in which folk remedies treated health problems, and in which travel was no faster than that possible by hoof or sail. So 1820, a person's life was not that different than 1,000 years before. Three great inventions of those 50 years: the railroad, right? We're going to talk about those this semester. Steamship and telegraph set the stage for more rapid progress after 1870, our time period. So just to kind of drive this point home for you a little bit more, another quotation from this book. The century after the Civil War, remember, American Civil War, 1861 to 1865. Our class picks up at 1865. The century after the Civil War was to be an age of revolution, of countless little noticed revolutions, which occurred not in the halls of legislatures or on battlefields or on the barricades, but in homes and farms and factories, in schools and stores across the landscape and in the air. Everyday life is where these unbelievable changes took place. So little noticed because they came so swiftly, because they touched Americans everywhere and every day. Not merely the continent, but human experience itself. Human experience itself. The very meaning of community, of time and space, of present and future was being revised again and again. A new democratic world was being invented. It was being discovered by Americans wherever they lived. Wow. And I agree with that 100%. Present and future. So, you know, aren't we always planning and worrying about what's next? You're in high school. Oh, what am I going to do for college? A job? I don't know. I'm in college. What am I going to do when I get out of college? Oh, I got my job. Oh, good. Am I going to have enough money for retirement? Oh, where am I going to get buried? That's pretty new, right? That's pretty new. It used to be, get up, I have to get enough food today so I don't die. Now, many people on Earth still live that way, okay? This is American history. We live in a comfortable, I don't know if I like this word a lot, advanced society. I don't know how advanced we are, but many people still wake up every day all over the world, and their major concern is getting enough food for them and their kids so they don't starve to death. So we have to remember that. We're talking about U.S. history here. All right, so modern humans first emerged about 100,000 years ago. I'm reading from the book here. For the next 99,800 years or so, nothing happened. Well, not quite nothing. There were wars, political intrigue, the invention of agriculture. That's pretty big. But none of that stuff had much effect on the quality of people's lives. Almost everyone lived on the modern equivalent of $400 to $600 a year, just above the subsistence level. Then, just a couple hundred years ago, people started getting richer and richer and richer still. So, for many, many years, it's really cold. It's 24 degrees out here. So, for many years, $400 to $600 a year, the modern equivalent, is what people lived off for thousands and thousands of years. And it was hard. But who knows? It's hard to conceive what it was really like. However, it was sustainable, right? It was sustainable. So it's very important. Actually, you know what? These videos only can run about 15 minutes. I think I'm right about where I am here. So I'm going to cut off here, and we'll go on part 2 of our little introduction to our time period. So I'll see you in a minute.